So before I go into episode 2 of Wordplay Wisdom, I'm putting out a little bit of just insights that kind of derive out of episode 1 recently. But before I go into episode 2, I want to go back to episode 0, the one that you guys have not heard. And I want to just share what is inspiring this Wordplay Wisdom thing. And the 3 ideas that are kind of the grounding forces for Wordplay Wisdom is the whole purpose of Wordplay Wisdom is a language to live by. It is about a discovering and a rediscovering of a language to live by as a human being. And that's based on 3 things, 3 E's. Experience, experimentation, and exposure. And part of connecting language is experiencing the words we say, and how they play out. By experiencing the words that we say and the words that are said to us and the way those things show up in our world is to experience that. From that experience, we have ground to experiment. We have material, that's like the clay, and we have material to play with. And this is where words begin to play in the process, is that we have to experiment with our experiences. We have to experiment and we have to try new things. We have to try new things. And so the process of allowing ourselves to have experience, to experience the language that we live by, to experience the words that we give to our lives and the words that are given to us about life. By experimenting with that, by playing with those words, by discovering different ways that those words can be heard in us, that process leads us to wisdom. It leads us to exposure. It leads us to being exposed to a whole new different way of thinking, a whole new creed of seeing and believing, an entire different culture of conceptualizing the world around us. The exposure becomes a really pivotal part because that's where the wisdom happens. That's where what we experience and what we experiment with meet. Right? And when those 2 things meet, and exposure is what gets created, when we are exposed to entire new ways of conceptualizing, entire new words of describing what it is that we are attempting to be realizing in our lives, it makes us come to life again. It makes us completely reimagine our experiences, and it adds a whole new fresh perspective to our experimentation. To do that, though, it's an interesting process. It is wise and both dumb to do this. To be exposed is both wise and dumb because it requires that we bring some of those wise words that we have heard inside of us and that we have heard ourselves say. But it also requires that we attempt to do things differently. And that can be a dumb thing to do, that there's a lot of dumbness that shows up. You make dumb errors, you make mistakes, you realize you don't know what the hell you thought you knew. You realize you may not have even understood some of the things that you were saying you wanted, or the things you were saying you needed, or the things that you were saying are part of who you are as a person. Or you may not have understood the very words you were using to describe the place that you were living in. You may not have understood the words that you were using to describe yourself. So when you expose yourself, right, to a much larger world, to a much larger language, when your words begin to walk into conversation, right? Conversation is the exchange of ideas and information and energy and perspectives. When that begins to happen and your words create the legs that walk into different conversations than you've been into. Those conversations could be within you, those conversations could be with other people, those conversations could be with other worlds, other places, other countries, other completely different ideas than what you understand. It allows you to go from understanding to understanding to overstanding, right? It allows you to get into the stances that you've had and to get into them and to see how they intersect with others' perspectives and other prospects of pursuing what it is that you may want to do or who you may want to become. But again, that requires us to be both wise and dumb. To remember, to reconnect with what it is that has kept us whole, and that keeps us whole, and that keeps us connected to the core of who we are. But it also requires that sometimes we throw the caution to the wind. It also requires that we dare to be dumb. Dare to be dumb. Dare to look dumb. Dare to do the tricks without the training wheels and to fall down along the way. So, this is the way of wordplay wisdom. It is a space of experience, experimentation, and exposure. And it's a journey that I've been taking for most of my life, particularly over the past 10 years. It's taken me into getting a degree in communication studies, studying rhetoric deeply, and then studying the trivium, which is the language aspect of the liberal arts, essentially grammar, logic, rhetoric. It's led me to things creatively, doing poetry and oral storytelling and rapping and all these things where you're playing with words and discovering insight in a creative way. It's led me on stages both, in the United States, in different states, in entirely different places, in entirely different countries. And in that process of doing that creatively and cultivating that, there was just a further understanding of how words form a language that we live by, and how we can reforge that and reform that. And if you haven't had a chance, I posted a story about the jewel of wisdom. And I think that's a real story that deeply connects to the type of language that we all can learn to live by. And that language, it doesn't necessarily get said in the same ways or approached in the same ways. But the way that continues underneath all that is the fact that we are humans, that we are human beings. It is about connecting to a deeper human experience that we all keep within us, and that we all keep coming to as we continue being human, as we continue as human beings. So, that's wordplay wisdom. And it has led me to recently getting a certification, being a TESOL certified teacher, and TESOL stands for Teaching English to Speakers of Other Languages, and to exploring the very fabrics of the English language and how that can live in the lives of those who have not known it all their lives. And that's taught me a lot of things about how people survive and thrive through language and through words. And I'm just in the very beginning of that journey, but it's a journey that wordplay wisdom is just something that has been a constant professional and personal and interpersonal and public and private process in my life. And it's one I want to share with you, and it's a journey that I hope that we can share together. So, this is your episode 0 of Wordplay Wisdom, of what it is. And I hope to see you in episode 2.